Jimmy Clark, and the £2.5 million man scores.
Hello and welcome back to another episode of the What the Falk podcast. Today's guest played almost 200 Premier League games and is seen as one of the biggest talents that ever come out of the northeast of England. Welcome to the show, Lee Clark. How are you, mate? You all right?
I'm very good, Graham. Thanks. Difficult times for everyone at the moment, but trying to get through that as best we can, and just obviously praying and hoping that everyone who has had the virus and can come through it, and then just while I'm here, be thankful to the fantastic NHS that we have in this country.
Absolutely. No, 100% echo that. I mean, we'd originally planned to sort of meet up at the university or somewhere we could record face to face, but I think we kind of gave up the ghost a few weeks ago, didn't we? And thought, let's just try Zoom or Skype or something over the internet and we'll get there. I mean, how are you coping with it?
Not so bad. I mean, I've said this on numerous occasions when I've done interviews since we've been in lockdown. I see myself as really fortunate. I live out in the countryside, so I've got, there's lots of untouched in terms of not many people around, so I can go out and do me exercise regime. For an hour a day, I walk the dog, and we don't really come into contact with people, so we're not, you don't feel under any intense pressure. What on the other side of the coin, when me and my wife have to go for the essential shopping, we feel a bit of a panic coming on, because then you start seeing people and you're thinking, are you the right distance apart, and are you breaking any of the new laws that have come under the legislation since the virus? So it's difficult times for everyone, isn't it? And it's unique in business, in the world that we live in, but I'm turning myself into a dab hand. I'm doing some work around the house, manual work around the house with my oldest son who's in the building trade, and my youngest son who's into football. I'm trying to put sessions on for him on an individual basis for him to keep his fitness up. So, and obviously myself, keep my own fitness regime. So there's lots to do if you want to do it. I mean, you can easily sit around and do nothing, but I think this far down the line, I think if you'd done that, you'd just be going stir crazy, and we realise that we're in a lucky position. There's obviously other people who don't have the luxury of the area around us or a garden or whatever. I mean, you understand that we're in a really, really lucky position to have that, because there'd be people who far worse positions than me and my family who, as I said, probably live in an apartment 4 or 5 floors up, can't really get out, got nowhere really to exercise unless they go out in the public domain. And then you have that little bit of panic that, could you be, if you've got the virus, because lots of people, I would imagine, don't know if they've got it. Yeah. And are they passing on to other people, or the vice versa? Are they catching it from someone they've got? So uncharted territory, but I think that what it's done is brought together the nation, really, and everyone, a majority of people are trying to do the right things so we can come out with this as quickly as possible.
Going back before viruses were even I was going to say before they were a thing, before this virus was a thing anyway. Am I right in saying you grew up in Walker?
I was born in Newcastle. I'm born and I was brought up on the banks of the Tyne. My house was a couple of 100 yards from the River Tyne. And in my teenage years, we moved from Walker to Wallsend, and then spent my later teenage years living in Wallsend, and so that was it. So I've always been an East End lad of the city. Schooled at St Anthony's Primary in Walker, then Benfield Comprehensive. And obviously played me football away from school football at Wallsend Boys Club. So that's the part of the world that I was born and bred and proud of.
So just for people listening, what we're going to do is try and split in your Newcastle time and also your Sunderland time as well. And obviously your Newcastle time came first as your boyhood club. Everyone knows that. But obviously growing up in Walker, Wallsend Boys Club, what are your earliest memories of growing up and sort of falling in love with football, be it playing or watching?
Going back to the first day, I was in my primary school and I was still in the infants part of it. I wasn't in the juniors, and I was just kicking a ball around in the yard at playtime, as you do. And the the PE teacher and football team manager, Mr. Jim Horrocks, was coming across the playground when I was messing around with the ball, and he just happened to say, "I got your boots with you, son." He says, "We've got a school football match tonight and we're short of 1 or 2 players." I was only 6 at the time. The team was an under-11 team. And I said I didn't have them, but I only lived a couple of 100 yards down the bank at Pottery Bank in Walker from the school, and I could get to them and get them quickly. Or if it would get a message to me mum, she would get me boots up to the school, which happened. And I was one of the substitutes that night for the school team, 5 years ahead of us. And I got on the pitch, and then I used to play every week after that. And then it quickly developed that there was a scout, Brian Clark, no relation, who was scouting and managing a Wallsend, one of the Wallsend Boys Club teams, and also a scout for Newcastle. And he asked us to go to the Wallsend Boys Club training, and they were, once again, their youngest team was under 11, but the rules were different under the Northumberland FA. You had to be, the youngest you could be to play in the under 11s was 9 years of age, but I was only 6. So I used to go and train with them. And how they got round it, they probably, I don't think they can reprimand them now 40 odd years later, but they used to have us down as someone else on the team sheet to get us around. So whichever one of the registered lads never turned up on the Sunday, I was them to get playing in the game, because I actually wasn't legally allowed to play because I was too young. So, but I used to do the training sessions, which the regime that you had at Wallsend Boys Club, the structure was unbelievable. So the youngest team under 11 all the way through to under 18s, there was a room upstairs where you'd do a physical half an hour, which might entail weights and press-ups and sit-ups and all this type of thing for half an hour. And then you go downstairs and do the ball work for half an hour. And as you left the gym, the under-12s would come in, and then it would go all the way through the night to the under-18s. And that give you a lot of structure, a lot of organisation at such a young age. And the boys' club was brilliant, not only because of the type of footballers it brought through and the quality of footballers, but the way it brought you up about being a person and how you behaved and all that,
And I think when you look through the list of people who've been at Wallsend Boys Club, there's a ridiculous list. Shearer's the kind of probably the go-to one, because obviously one of England's top scorers. But you also look down the list and you've got people like Michael Bridges, Beardsley, Carrick. The list
they've done a T-shirt a while back. They've done a Premier League 11, and it was the likes of Alan and Peter Beardsley were the front two. Myself and Michael Carrick were like the midfield two, and you had like a Robbie Elliott, Alan Thompson, Stevie Watson, Stevie Bruce. I can't remember all of them, but there was more than just 11 starting players who'd actually played for the boys club, had played in the Premier League, and when you name the team, probably would have been a good old team as well. So, it was. Listen, it was a fantastic period. When we weren't training for the 11-a-side teams, we used to go and play in the 5-a-side leagues that were on there every other night. So we're in the boys' club itself 5 nights a week, and then playing for the 11-a-side team on a Sunday. So it was huge.
Who's at that first spotted your talent at the Wallsend Boys Club to take you towards Newcastle? Or was there kind of a natural progression with that? Was there someone who always said, look, these are the key 4 or 5 players in the team?
Yeah, as I said, the scout for the manager of the team at the time, Brian Clark of the Wallsend Boys Club under 11 team, which entailed Ian Bogie, Paul Stevenson, Jeff Wright, and older lads. But that was our team, and then but he was also scouting for Newcastle. So when I got to the age, I started going into the Centre of Excellence from the age of 11, which is basically what the academy is now, but it was called a Centre of Excellence then. And as you said, my age group. And then the year above was Steve Howie, and the year below was Alan Thompson, Steve Watson, Robbie Elliott. So we all used to train together, and it was good because we came through the teams together, the youth teams, and we didn't spend a lot of time in the reserves anyway to be up to such a long time. We played a handful of games, and then we got into the first team. So our careers mirrored each other really in terms of what we'd done and the time scale and how we achieved it. So it was good because we had a good group and we had a real successful youth team at that stage as well.
How much does that help with chemistry when you get to the first team, when you've come through a lot of different youth teams together with teammates who've come to the first team with you from, say, the under-18s? Does that give you a good chemistry going into the first team?
It did. We were very competitive against each other. We pushed each other in training. We pushed each other in the matches. When someone achieves something, if there's someone in the group who hadn't done that yet, they quickly wanted to aspire to that. So I think we drove each other on. But we had a great relationship with each other away from the football pitch. We looked after one another. Away from that, we were good pals. But we'd grown up together, and we came from an era where, when it came to the football side of it, and we took this into my professional side when we got to the first team level, we weren't frightened to fall out with each other in terms of to try and get the right result as players. But as soon as that was finished, we become best mates again. All of us, there was a group of us. You think we came through as apprentices, and we had good times where we're in at 7 o'clock in the morning, cleaning boots and preparing what the professionals' kit. So we had great camaraderie with each other. We used to, we spent like 12 hours a day with each other when we were apprentices and all that. So we spent more time with each other than we did with family. So we had a great relationship. But we were driven individuals. And as I said, we drove each other on. I think when someone achieves something better than what anyone else had achieved, it drove the rest of the group on to try and get to that level as quickly as possible.
When you were coming through the youth team, was the likes of Waddle and Gazza, and were they like in the first team at that point?
No, Chris had gone. Later years as schoolboy, Peter was just on the verge of leaving for Liverpool at the first time. Peter Beardsley. Gazza was still about. Gazza was the big thing. So Gazza, took a lot of time, and us lads showed a lot of. He would finish training with the first team, then run across to a couple of pitches, the training ground, and come and join in with us. So he had that chemistry. He'd come back sometimes on night sessions when we trained after school and train with the sessions there. He had a love of the game, and so we got to know him. And obviously he was the big thing at the time, and so he played a big part in what we were trying to achieve, because we'd seen what he was doing, and he was the most high-profile player at the time, because he was making a big impression both on the national stage and international stage.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially at that point, obviously, probably the best player at the World Cup in 1990 around that time, wasn't he?
Absolutely.
Without a doubt. Obviously, I think you came through under Jim Smith. Now, I've spoke to a few people who've played under Jim Smith, and I always say, well, what was he like? And the first word I always get is fucking frightening. Like, what was he like in your experience?
Fucking frightening. But the thing was that he was good for the young players, even though he was ruthless. I'll always be in debt to him. He gave us my debut at 17. I was playing in midfield alongside Roy Aitken, who was captain of Scotland at the time.
Scottish captain, yeah.
Yeah, played a lot of games, record appearance holder for Celtic. And when Jim went off on one, he directed his rage more at Roy than he would at me. I think he seen on me as the young pup, and he didn't want to destroy my confidence too much. But I was still terrified of him. We had lots of good senior players at that time: Roy Aitken, Kevin Dillon, Ray Ranson, John Burridge, Mark McGee, Mickey Quinn, to name but a few. And they were always at loggerheads with Jim, but they were great for us youngsters coming into the group. At that stage, I think it was me and Steve Watson and Steve Howie were the three that got first team debuts through Jim and were part of that group. But it was terrifying, I've got to say.
Yeah, I think it was Danny Higginbotham that I interviewed, and I think he would have played under him about 9 or 10 years later, and pretty much exactly the same. So he didn't change after he left Newcastle.
What I said, I bumped into Jim a few years later. Jim was commentating on a Newcastle game for television. I think we were playing Portsmouth, two of his old clubs, and I bumped into him in the airport after the game. I was flying to meet up with England under 21s, and I was a lot more experienced then. And I'd said to Jim that, as I said, I had massive respect for him for what he'd done, giving us my debut, and that I would have more experience, being a more experienced player, being more mature. I would love to have played under him later on. And in fact, just before I signed for Sunderland, I went to speak to him when he was Derby County manager to sign for him at Derby in the Premier League. But obviously I didn't. I went to Sunderland. But the Jim Smith that frightened us when I was 17, 18, it would have been a different different relationship because I was more experienced then and more mature, and I would have understood the reasons for him doing it and would have been able to handle that. Because you never held a grudge. You never, as soon as the game was over, that was it, finished. You just cracked on.
Ozzy Ardiles came in not long after that, and I think people kind of almost forget about that because of how successful Keegan was. Unfortunately for me, being a Sunderland fan. But what was Ozzy Ardiles like? Was he? Because I've heard he was quite a lovely bloke considering everything he achieved.
He was a fantastic man, and he was massive in developing us even further. Because he gave all of us our heads. We used to play every single week. There was 8 or 9 away, and the great story was from his first home game. He came to Benwell and we were playing in the youth team against actually Sunderland. And we beat Sunderland, I think 7-1 on the morning. And he went to take the first team in the afternoon full of all these senior players. And I think we lost at St James's, and the following week we played Notts County. We were in the first team. And 9 of those 11 that played against Sunderland in the morning, the youth team, were in the 15 for the first team the following Saturday. And we stayed in the team, and he gave so many young players their debuts. The club was nowhere near where it was going to be financially in a couple of months' time. He was a terrific manager. He was a perfect manager to develop the young players because he believed in us. He didn't pressurise us when results would go against us because we were naive. There was many games of evidence where we'd be 3 goals up or 4 goals up and would draw the game or lose the game because we didn't have the knowledge or the experience to see the game out. We continued to get an extra goal, and but he always encouraged with us to show our true potential. So even though he didn't reap the rewards of the youngsters, obviously when Kevin came in, he's seen the importance of 5 or 6 of us who ended up staying with him all the way through his tenure as manager and being part of the success. And when they did eventually see us as surplus requirements, they sold us for substantial fees.
With Ardiles, he brought in David Kelly as well, didn't he? Also, obviously must have had an eye for a player because David Kelly was not so good for Sunderland, but he was all right for Newcastle, shall we say.
He was very good for Newcastle, and the story that goes with that is because they were so financially stricken before Sir John Hall's Magpie Group took over. Ozzy Ardiles actually paid for David Kelly out of his own money with an interest-free loan to Newcastle. So all they had to do was, once Sir John Hall took over with the new finances, just give the money, give the £250,000 back to Ozzy. Now, how many managers would do that? Put their own money on the table to bring a player into the football club because he thought that David would be a good fit, and he was. So, that was a terrific signing by Ozzy.
Kevin Keegan came in, and I was very, very young, and obviously I'm from the opposite side I'm from the Weir, so I remember it in a very different way. But when Keegan came in, could you feel that the minute he walked in the door, it was going to be as special as it was for Newcastle?
Absolutely. The aura was ridiculous when he walked in the room. But I'd been there to witness when he came as a player in 82. I first went to watch Newcastle in 80, so I had 2 years of mediocrity at best. And then Kevin came through the door as a player, and the club just took off in every aspect. The size of the crowds sold out every weekend in the home games. The expectation, the quality of player that wanted to come sign for the club, even though it was First Division Championship now. And it was just the joy them 2 years is when he played for us were just ridiculous, so special. When he come back as a manager, it was like that aura. You were like, you didn't look at him as just a footballer or a football manager. He was just this superstar, and you had that aura of him, and he carried on right until his last day with every single player he signed. Everyone had unbelievable respect for him, and hung on every word he said, and that was one of his main assets, and he knew that. He obviously had another asset was his quality of his signings. He always seemed to strengthen the team at the right time, make it better, improve the team. So the players that were already there, we had to improve again to try and be around, because you knew if you didn't get to the level that was required, you'd be moved on. And so, I was there from his first day to his last of his first tenure, and he said it would be a roller coaster ride, and it certainly was, and most of it was upwards.
Talking about the signings that he brought in, there was one particular one that stuck out in my mind, looking through the list of players he brought in. Yes, you had Beresford, Cole, Rob Lee, but for you personally, I'm looking at Bracewell, Paul Bracewell would have came in at that point, hugely experienced. You would still be sort of early 20s. How good was Paul Bracewell? Because I remember him being superb when he was 34, 35.
Well, I was still a teenager. I was still a teenager, 19, pushing 20.
Yeah.
When Paul first came in, and I became his midfield partner. And what Paul done for me, he's such an experienced player, and he'd obviously come from that fantastic Everton team that he played for, won the league and Winners' Cup, and becoming international, and was an exciting box-to-box player. But he was such an intelligent player that when he come to his latter years, he made himself more into a defensive midfield player. So that allowed me, as a young, exuberant, vibrant midfield player who liked to bomb on and join in with the attacks, with Paul's knowledge and discipline, that allowed me to do that. And Paul would get a bit like Bally later down the line at Sunderland, done all the unseen dirty work that enabled me to go and join in with the attacking players and have all the fun making and scoring goals. So their two jobs were massive. But Paul played a massive influence on me, both on and off the pitch, in terms of how he went about things, his discipline, his professionalism, how he trained, how he prepared for matches. And as I said, a teammate in Newcastle played a massive part in his signing for Sunderland when he was Peter Reid's assistant. And then obviously I signed for him when he was manager of Fulham. Yeah. So played a huge part of my career.
Newcastle, as it were, obviously went on to win the league at that point. I think it was 20th the season beforehand, win the league the season afterwards. Made some great signings, winning the league, obviously fantastic for you. But then the most unbelievable thing, probably looking back, is how well you did in your first season in the Premier League. You went from winning the league to finishing third. It's something you just don't really see these days at any point. How did you manage to not just adapt to the league so quickly, but almost push for a second title immediately?
Well, I tell you what was the best thing that could happen to it. We got brought down, bang, the first game of the season, the new season at home to Tottenham. Everyone was, we're going to do this, we're going to do that. The place was on a high. We just got Tottenham Hotspur, one of the big names in the Premier League, at home. First game, sun was shining. They schooled us. They've done a top class, top flight job on us. Beat us 1-0. I think Sheringham scored the goal. We went to Coventry, who weren't, were probably mid-table, and that's not being disrespectful because they've been in the Premier League a while, and they beat us as well. And those two games was basically the wake-up call. Because on the following Saturday we're going to Old Trafford, the last place where you want to go when you've lost your first two games in the Premier League. But we went there and we played exceptionally well. We drew 1-1, which was more than we at least we deserved. And that gave us the confidence. And then after that, we went on a run, and we had the little kick up the bum we needed, because I think we maybe thought it was going to be a little bit. We're starting to believe a little bit of the hype that was getting talked about with. Yeah. And those two first games brought us back down, crashing to earth, and we responded. I think we showed what mentality was.
As it was, Sky Sports came into play. The Premier League was in full swing by that point. I think Newcastle basically gradually turned into the team that people wanted to watch on Sky Sports if they were neutral, because of the way they played. And I think if you're a neutral, you like seeing it, attacking play as it was. As much as it kills me to say that, I've got to be honest. But the likes of Ginola, Shearer, Ferdinand, all those players in the team, you went 12 points clear at Christmas. In truth, did you think you were going to win the league at that point?
Well, actually 12 points clear in end of Jan, early Feb as well. And I've got to say, we never ever had the conversations with each other that we were going to win the league and do this and do that. It's a horrible old cliche. It was just look forward to the next game. And we didn't get, we got to the nitty gritty part of the season. We didn't have the experience that Man United had. I think we only had 3-4 players who'd been there and won it.
Yeah.
Peter Beardsley, Barry Venison, was he still around, Barry? I mean, Alan wasn't there at the time when we were 12 points clear. He came the following summer, so he'd obviously won it with Blackburn. But yeah, when you were in the position we were in, it was a difficult one, really. Does
it give you that level of experience that you want, where you think, right, let's not let that happen again? If I get in that position, it's not going to happen again.
Absolutely. And then that summer, after you haven't won the league, you go and smash the world transfer record to get the best striker in the world. You think, well, yeah, listen, this is going to be it. We missed out last year. we learned from their experience as individuals. Like I said to you earlier, the manager, Keegan, went out and just improved the squad once again. And as he said, we were on our Far East tour before Alan met up with us. We were in Bangkok and Alan met with in the Singapore leg of the tour. He said, if you didn't already realise that you were playing for one of the biggest clubs in Europe, the most ambitious clubs in Europe, you need to now, because we've just smashed the world transfer record for one of the most highly sought after strikers in the world. So, but we knew, and for me, as I said to you earlier about the Wallsend Boys Club situation, Alan was a couple of years older than me and he was there. So I'd known Alan many years and knew about him, and obviously seen what he'd been doing at Southampton and Blackburn. So when we got him, we thought, well, this could be it. And unfortunately, it wasn't. 6 months down the line, Kevin's quit. Kenny Dagley, Shallin's old boss, has come in, who had a fantastic pedigree at Liverpool and Blackburn. But we finished second again. But obviously we've done that on the last day of the season, with the results going our way and us getting a result. But that's the mentality of the club. We were disappointed. We'd finished second 2 years on the bounce, and we were disappointed.
Was Tina Asprilla there at that point? He signed just before Shearer, didn't he?
Tino signed just in the January of the season before, when we're 12 points clear, Postino,
How, because I can see, obviously people won't be able to see this because I'll be putting it on audio, but I've seen like a smile rise to your face as soon as I mentioned his name. What was he like?
Brilliant. Great character. Lovable rogue. Fantastic footballer on his day, unplayable. Just an absolute bought into the club straight away. Still talks fondly about it. I mean, one story I've got about him, I've told it numerous times, but he came back from international duty and he was lying on the treatment table face down, and I walked in and I was messing about with him, and he had a big sort of gash across the back of his calf. And I said to him, Tino, bad tackle in the game? He says, no, Nash. My nickname was Nash. He said, no, Nash. He says, bullet wound. I says, bullet wound? He says, yes, back in Colombia. He says, skimmed across the back of my calf. And I said to him, in all seriousness, hey, Tino, you need to calm down, with all this bad behaviour, you'll get kicked off the national team. And his response was, Nashki, me and Pablo Escobar picked the national team.
The stories you hear about him, even from a red and white perspective, some of the stories you heard were like, I think it was a Darlington that tried to sign him. Is that right? Was it Darlington?
Yeah. One of the famous George Reynolds incidents.
That 12-point drop that you had, there was a period where everyone remembers it, and it's a Keegan outburst, it's coming. But what's funny about that, what a lot of people don't realise, and if you watch the full thing back, Richard Keys is literally dropping bombs, and you can see the twitch in Kevin Keegan's eye, he's getting a bit cheesed off. Most people just play him getting angry, but if you watch Richard Keys, he drops those little bombs just to rile him up. Did he say anything after he came in? Did he say, "Oh, lads, I've just gone off on the telly," or was it just did you just come in and say?
No, what happened was because it was after we'd beat Leeds at Ellen Road.
That's right,
1-0 on the Tuesday night. And we were travelling straight to Nottingham because our game in hand was Nottingham Forest on the Thursday. And the situation, what had riled Kevin was, we were playing Forest on the Thursday, then us and Man United at our last games of the season on the Sunday. And if we had went to Forest and won, we would have been in the driving seat. And Alex Ferguson, before we played Leeds, had come out and said, well, we need Leeds to get a result, but it's all in Newcastle's favour because Leeds, Man United's big rival, in Forest, after the season finished, we were going back to the City ground to blame Stuart Pearce's testimonial. Because at that time, lads with testimonials, they wanted full houses, they wanted Newcastle United because they knew the fans would travel.
Yeah.
So after the season finished, we were going back to the City ground for Pearce's testimonial. And that's what Ferguson had played on in the media before the Leeds game. He said, well, they'll beat Leeds because Leeds won't want to see Man United win the league. They'll want Newcastle. And they'll beat Forest because Forest won't try because they're going back the week after that to look after Stuart Pearce and his testimonial. And I think that's what had riled Kevin. So when Kevin got into the nitty-gritty, but when he got on the bus for us to travel from Ellen Road down to Nottingham, he just made a big joke of it. He said to Terry McDermott, his assistant, and to the lads, you need to watch Sky for me interview. It's absolutely mental. So I think the press made more of it in terms of the mind games than what Kevin was thinking. I think Kevin, he was what he was. He wore his heart on his sleeve, but it was just his normal reaction.
So obviously, moving on to the red and white time of your career, I've got to be honest, and I'll ask a straightforward question. I'm only thinking from my perspective. Could I ever play for Newcastle? I don't know. Depends how much it pays. But your first club after Newcastle, could you have ever imagined it would have been Sunderland?
No. And when I decided that my time was up at Newcastle, which I did, I wasn't being forced out the door. In fact, the opposite, they were offering us a new contract.
Yeah.
What they couldn't promise is what I wanted was to be playing week in, week out. And that's all I wanted to do. So I got the permission when the clubs, 6 or 7 clubs, put a fee in that was accepted, that I could go and speak to them. And Sunderland was the last club I met. But this was in the summer. In the previous January, Peter Reid and Paul Bracewell, they wanted me to try and sign me in the January, as they were fighting relegation from the Premier League to try and keep them up. And I just didn't want to move at that time. I wanted to stay at Newcastle and see where we could finish. And so that was a non-starter from my point of view. We waited till the summer. Obviously, Sunderland got relegated. But I knew there was a new challenge there because they were leaving Roker Park and going to the Stadium of Light. And then I met Peter, the last out of all the managers, and said to him, as I approached, we met in a wine bar in Manchester, and I said to him, that, listen, I've come out of courtesy. There's no chance I'll be signing for you. 3 or 4 bottles of champagne later, I've signed a 5-year contract. So
I think that's really, isn't it? That's really, isn't it?
I played 2 years. I loved the manager. I loved his staff. Paul Bracewell, Bobby Saxton, Ricky Sabrasia, Pop Robson, different class, all the coaches, the camaraderie between the staff and the players he brought in, the lads that were already there. You know, I walked into a dressing room where there was Stone Shredding Whites and Kevin Ball and Mickey Gray, and I think that was, I didn't just have to win the fans over, I had to win them lads over, and I had to hit the ground running. And I had, as I said, you know, the first game at the Stadium of Light when we opened it against Ajax, and then the first league game against Man City. I think me, Kev Phillips and Quinny scored on a Friday night. I knew I'd made the right decision. I had a young son, I had a young family. I didn't particularly want to leave the Northeast. You know, as I said, the football side of it, 2 years in a brilliant team, played great football, really enjoyable. And, you know, my 2 worst days in football were losing a playoff final as a player against Charlton, and losing a playoff final as a manager. They go down as my 2 worst days. So for me to say that as a black and white and a Newcastle fan, to say one of my worst days in football was losing a playoff final with Sunderland shows you that once I decided and was committed to be the player, my heart was in it, and I was there for the, you know, for the ups and downs, and I didn't enjoy the odd time we did lose a game. So that second season when we won the championship was a fantastic season. But I just knew in my heart of hearts, this was me being honest again, one of the big things I had in my career in terms of I give everything every game, no matter if I was playing well, playing okay, playing poorly. At least no fan could ever criticise us as not giving me best. And I just had this feeling that could I approach a time where Derby where I was playing for Sunderland against Newcastle in the same way? My thought straight away was no, probably I couldn't, and I didn't want to take that. I never ever wanted to be accused of that, and that was the reason. Obviously, the way it ended was not the way I wanted it to. I only played for 3 clubs. I'm welcomed back with open arms to 2 of them, and the other one where I had 2 fantastic seasons. I don't know. It could be a good welcome that I could get there. It could be still people, and rightly so, who hold a grudge. I don't judge them for that. I let them down. You know, the saying in anything is you don't bite the hand that feeds you, and I did that. And that's the bit, getting more mature and become a manager on my own right further down the line. That's the thing that disappoints us. I would love to go back there, and watch games. You just don't know the reaction, and that's only my fault. So that's the disappointing thing.
Do you know when you first moved? You mentioned before about Mickey Gray. You talking about winning them over and stuff like that. Surely Mickey Gray and a few of the red and whites that were in that dressing room must have tried to prod the bear a little bit when you first went in, just to see what you were about a little bit. Did Mickey Gray ever drop any little digs when you first came over?
I think they probably did. I think they tested us. They probably would have. And I think Bawley, who wasn't a local, but had been at the club that long and became a stalwart and so highly thought of there, and rightly so. I think he was the one that was looking at all aspects of what I was about, because I think he was looking to see if I'd just made the move for financial reasons.
Yeah,
because obviously I'd become that record signing, and what comes with that is the salary and all that. So, and I had to prove that it wasn't just about that; it was about me, staying in the area. But I had standards, and I didn't want to let anyone down. And thankfully, I didn't. The 2 years I had on the pitch were fantastic. And two of my closest friends at the club become Kevin Ball and Mickey Gray. But I had many, because we had a great spirit which showed on the pitch. The likes of Alex Ray, Kev Phillips, Michael Bridges, Niall Quinn, Nicky Summerby. I mean, Alan Johnson was a quiet lad, but he still mixed in. Chrissy Makin, Andy Melville, a couple of young centre-halves as well at the time. Richard Ord, he was staunch red and white as well. So there was people like that in the dressing room that I went into, and you've got to win over. So that's what I, wanted to do straight away, and thankfully it happened.
Talking about Bawley, and that, obviously I know Bawley is still really good friends with you. I can't remember the game, but I'm sure it was Leicester in the semi-final of the... Now, yeah. I remember there was an argument on the pitch. Now, don't get me wrong, everyone has arguments on the pitch. That's just the way it is. That's just the way football is if you're a winner. But what was what it made me think of is, obviously you're close with Bawley and you still are now, but what was Bawley like when he got angry? How scary is Bawley when he's angry?
Oh, very. So things here is... Like I said earlier about those lads I grew up with in Newcastle, it's great that you're the best of mates, but if you're that good of mates and you think that highly of each other, when it comes to winning a football match, if you feel someone's not doing it, you've got to give them a bit of a telling off. And I think Bawley was a little bit disappointed to what he thought I was contributing to our partnership, and he was right, and we had a little bit of a set to, but. In that instance, Kev was right. Because all Kev used to say to myself was, what was great about Kevin was he didn't try and be something he wasn't. He knew what he was. He would be aggressive, both in the air and on the ground with the opposition. He would win majority of his tackles. And he just used to say to me, when I win the ball, make sure you're round us so I can give it to I give it to you and you can get us off playing. And that's what makes a team. It's a jigsaw puzzle. It's, no good me and Kev being the same type of player playing alongside each other. And I respected him for what he'd done, and he respected me for... So we ended up becoming the perfect partnership because we'd done different things to each other to the contribution of the team. And we become such good mates that when he signed for Fulham, we lived together for 6 months. So, things like that, I always expected. And one of the funny stories, one of my first insights into what Kevin was about, he was a motivational captain in the Ajax game where we were opening the stadium, but were basically testing it to make sure everything was right.
Yeah.
And there was lots of things going on, security tests, fire tests, and making sure all the areas were fit for purpose. And as the buzzer went to go out onto the pitch, Kev's synonymous for giving a motivational speech to the lads before we go out. And it was while he used to have a hold of the dressing room door. So he started banging this dressing room door backwards and forwards while shouting back at us all to get us motivated. And obviously the stadium was brand new and the door just came off in his hand. And I'm thinking, wow, this is my new captain. I better get this sorted before he starts throwing me around like he is that door.
With some absolute nutcases like Alex Ray and Bowley on the pitch, like how much did you know you had like your partner next to you? How much like confidence would that give you knowing you got someone like Alex Ray or Kevin Bowley who'll run through brick walls for your teammates?
They give us massive freedom, the two of them. As I said to you, we contributed to each other, but they'd done a lot of the unseen work that sometimes only your teammates appreciate, and they've done it massively for me. So I had to contribute on the other side, because if I wasn't doing that, all their doggy work and unseen work was going to waste. And between the three, whichever one was left out, or if we played together, we had each other's back. We had a great relationship. There was a great togetherness. We played how we trained. We trained how we played, and it meant it was a competitive week leading up to the games, and it must have been difficult for the manager and his staff to choose. I mean, and it was the same with the striking positions. You talk about one of the best up-and-come young strikers in the business at the time. Michael Bridges couldn't get in the team because of Kevin and Niall. Went on to have a brilliant career, Bridgie. So it was like, I think there was the utmost respect between me, Alex and Kevin, because we knew what each other gave to each other, and we knew that we'd have each other's backs in different ways, and that would help each other on the pitch and to contribute. That's what we've done. We made sure that we made the connection. So whichever pair was picked, we'd done the job.
When you joined, as you mentioned before, you're obviously the key signing at that point, or the headline signing, because you're the record signing as well. But another little 5'7" lad joined with you at the time, little known guy called Kevin Phillips. I think the fans' reaction, if I remember rightly, I remember my dad's reaction was, "Who's that?" I thought, he's at Watford. I don't know what he's like, but you got to see him on the training pitch before we got to see him on the pitch itself. Could you tell straight away with Kevin Phillips that he was going to be that good? Could you just see he just had it?
Absolutely. He had everything what I'd seen from the previous top strikers I played with. He had all those attributes. He had an arrogance of a goal scorer. He had a terrific first touch, and he had an unbelievable leap for a little guy, as you said. We both had short hair, similar to what I've got now. We're both the same sort of height, but he used to just score 30 more goals than me a season, so that was the difference.
You got your most amount of goals, I think, didn't you, in the first season of Sunderland? Did we have 4 players on double? I think you had 13. Johnson had 11. Quinney had about 15 to 20. And Phillips had, 35? Was 35?
Yeah, I think I might even had more than 13. I mean, I think I could even possibly got myself into 20 that season, but unbeknown to a lot of people, I played the last 4 months of the season with a double hernia problem. I used to have to get it treated, and I got, as soon as about 3 or 4 days after the playoff final against Charlton, I went in for surgery. And if you remember, I didn't do a lot of the following pre-season because I was still recovering. And then my first game back was the last pre-season game at Hartlepool on the Friday night. I played in that. And then we had QPR at home in the first game. And I broke my leg after 30 minutes. And Bowley was trying to pull my boot off, I remember. And I think he probably made the break worse.
I remember when that happened, actually, against QPR. And I think at that point, you were seen as absolutely pivotal to the team. But you came back really fast, didn't you, from a broken leg? What was it, 2.5 months?
I came back, so that would have been August. I don't know what part of August the first game of the season was in that season. But I was back October. But I never really got back to firing for another 4 or 5 weeks. I remember I started brightly. My first couple of games, I was probably playing on adrenaline. Yeah. And then we played Stockport at home, and I had a really average game, and I had a little spell for about 2 or 3 weeks where the adrenaline was weaning off, and my lack of match fitness, because I think I only had one reserve game before I came back. And then obviously after the 3 or 4 games, just got myself back in the run, and then we went on it, and we're just on fire for the rest of the season.
Because I think you came back at the same time as Alex. Obviously, I think Alex went out of the game for 6 to 7 weeks because of, I think it was drinking issues at the time. I think it was classed as, and I think you were just coming back as he'd gone out. So it would have been you and Borley at that point. I don't know how much you recall of it, but when something like what happened with Alex happens, obviously that can be quite difficult for a person. How good do you think it would have been or how good was the team in rallying around him at that point?
Fantastic. I remember the day he was coming back, we got the news that he was coming back into the training ground, and because we loved him and we didn't know how to react, what was the right thing to say. And it was Bobby Saxton who broke the ice and filled his locker up with lager and what was it? Brandy trifle and stuff like that. And he broke the ice a little bit by doing that, and the whole dressing room went up and laughed at. So I think that helped the mood, because everyone was like, well, what do you say? You know, how do you approach it? Never really been in that situation. And, you know, it's great. I see him now, and he's still he's still sober. So yeah. It shows, you know. I mean, he was a better player. I knew he was a good player, but when I got to play alongside him, he became a better player than what I'd realised as well. And he was a funny guy. He was a very funny guy. I loved his humour, and I loved his character. So it was good when he came back from, obviously, that personal issue that he had.
I think Alex Ray might be the funniest man that I've ever had the pleasure to meet. He just, honestly, I feel like a fanboy every time I meet him, because it's everything that comes out of his mouth I'm just rolling on the floor with. He's just got a fantastic way of telling a story, hasn't he? Absolutely brilliant. And you know, as I said, that's why it was important. We were like a family. We cared for one another, and when something like that happened to him, as I said, we felt it, and we didn't really know how to approach it when he was coming back. Do you just do it with a bit of humour, or do you do it with a bit of humility? Maybe it's a few tears, but, you know, as I said, Sacco broke the ice, so that allowed us all just to have a laugh over it. I think Peter Reid rightly gets loaded for how good his management was when he was at Sunderland, but Bobby Saxton, the more you speak to people and the more stories you hear, you realise how big of a part he was. But Sacco was a brilliant character and still is. What are your memories of Bobby Saxton? Because obviously, I think you were with him at Newcastle for a really short time as well, because he was caretaker manager there, wasn't he, for like a couple of games? Well, I was going to say to you that he probably played a pivotal part as well as Brace and me going to Sunderland, because he was the assistant manager to Jim Smith when I got my debut, and he used to always come to the reserve games that I was playing in and would praise us and speak highly of us. So when I got there, and Bobby was the assistant to Peter with Brace, I knew I had two people who had worked with us before were on my side. That gives you a lot of confidence. But Bobby was very straight and to the point. Didn't beat around the bush. He worked extremely hard through the week on tactics against the opposition and how we're going to deal with things. Not in terms of how we were going to play, because it was very similar to my time at Newcastle. Peter and Bobby both believed that we had quality players, that in terms of what we'd done with the ball, we went and played our natural game, but without the ball, you know, the tactics to combat the opposition. Bobby worked extremely hard on, and he took a lot of pride on that. So, you know, as I said to you about the playoff final, I felt down that day. I've never seen a man involved in a football match as down as Bobby Saxton after that game. And you know, that I've seen that funny footage of him on the touchline when he's looks like he's doing the Highland jig at times when he's kicking every ball. But that was Bobby. He loved the game, still does now. I bump into him at, you know, different sporting events, and it's fantastic to see him. Load of respect for the man, and you know, he was, as you said, and Peter knew that as well. Peter realised how important Bobby was for him. There's a particular game that I remember, and we've talked about the playoff final, which was a phenomenal game for so many different reasons. I was 11, and even I remember the emotion that I felt as an 11-year-old. God knows what it must have been like being on the pitch. But simultaneously, I also remember the game just before that, the playoff semi-final against Sheffield United, which is, in my opinion, probably the best atmosphere that the Stadium Light's ever seen. I don't think it's ever been beaten. What are your memories of that night?
Just electric. The fans, you talk about fans driving you to a result. When we stepped out on that pitch a couple of minutes before kick-off, it's easy to see it now because we won it. I knew we were going to win because the atmosphere, the noise that was driving on. There was no way we were not going to get the result that night and we just come out the traps like flying. The manager had instilled us in it. He was like, we've done well in the first leg. We're disappointed with the result, not with the performance, but we can deliver again. And that's what we did. And that noise that night was another example that if once I decided to leave Newcastle, I'd made the right choice in where I was going.
After that particular season, after the playoff season, after Wembley and the 4-4 with Charlton and obviously the penalties, even though, and I think everyone knew it, and I think everyone knows it now that you are staunch Newcastle, and everyone knew that at the time. No one ever doubted your commitment on the pitch, and I don't think anyone does now, but in a sense, you moved because you thought it was the right move for your career. But after a season like that and a game like that, do you start to feel like emotion for the fans and the club rather than it just being the club that you play for? Did you start feeling like something for Sunderland?
I did. Of course I did. I felt for the fans. I felt for everybody connected with the club that day when we walked around Wembley, when we left Wembley afterwards as well. The 4 or 5 days afterwards were horrific. And it wasn't, I never want to experience, and unfortunately I did as a manager, which is probably even worse. But it's, of course, they'd come to, I'd won them over. They were supporting me week in, week out, through thick and thin. So, yeah, every time I step out onto a pitch, I always think it's important that you're having an affinity with the fans and you're sure that you're giving your best for them. And that was a relationship I had. And that's why I say I'm disappointed because of what happened at the end, because of that relationship would never be the same again.
What did you make of all the merchandise? I remember the Clarkies and Mackham and stuff like that. You must have got a bit of stick from your mates from that.
You know what? I can't even, all that type of stuff, I didn't really get a lot to know about. I wish I had. If I could have got a percentage of it now.
I've got one somewhere, but I had to get rid of it after your bloody T-shirt incident. You wasted $13.99 there.
That would have been on the next bonfire. That
I'm saying nothing, mate. But yours $13.99, just to let you know. I think when it comes to sort of the career that you had at Sunderland, I think you're right in what you're saying. It was a really successful 2 years. And yes, it ended in the way that it did. But, and this is a really hypothetical question, I suppose, but say that the T-shirt incident hadn't happened, and say that even though you thought, I don't think I can play St James's for Sunderland, and you were forced to stay, because we know what really could have been like. I think everyone's heard about that, and you were forced to stay at Sunderland. How do you think the future would have panned out for you in Sunderland if you'd stayed?
I would have been part of the success they continued to have under a brilliant manager. And, who knows what would have happened 3-4 years down the line. It's hard to say. I think if the T-shirt incident hadn't happened, I would have definitely stayed, because Peter was adamant that I wasn't moving. I'd actually asked, I'd had a conversation with him before the T-shirt incident about the situation, what I've said about, playing Newcastle and not being right. And he said, no, you're going to be part of what I want to do here. And so, yeah, I believe I cannot say that me being there would improve, because the two finishing 7th and 2 successive seasons were terrific. And and then you get the old adage after that, sometimes you don't realise what you've got till it's gone. And the incident when Peter got moved on because I hadn't started the 3rd season as well as things had gone. But yeah, I believe I would have been a part of that successful period. But I think if I had went down the line, and I think this is where it would have been different. If that incident with Peter if I had stayed hypothetically in that 3rd season in the Premier League, Peter got removed, I think I would have been looking certainly to move on then, because he was the mainstay and the main reason for most of us being there, because we loved playing for him.
I don't think, and this is just a personal opinion, I don't think it's healthy to have any level of regrets. And I think a lot of footballers don't, because your career is your career and you had a good one. But do you know when we were like 7th off top and we were beating Chelsea 4-1 at half-time or 4-0 at half-time, and you've seen how well we did. And I don't mean a regret as in, do you regret wearing the T-shirt? Because that's been covered a million times over. But did you ever regret not just like thinking, oh, yeah, you know what, I wish I was part of that. I wish I was part of that team that's hammering Chelsea 4-1 and stuff like that?
I never had those feelings, because my next venture proved to be a fantastic venture for us as well at Fulham.
Absolutely.
I ended up captaining the club, you know, into its highest ever position in the Premier League, into a first time competing in Europe. So, you know, that helped. If I had went to a club that hadn't become successful,
maybe.
No doubt there would have been lots of regrets that I wanted to be a part of what was going on back at Sunderland. But because we were having our own success at Fulham, you know, that never came into my mind.
I've got one more question for you, and it's one that's nagged me for years and years and years and years. And it's probably easier than you think. I normally give me guests a bit of a tougher question to finish, right? But where the hell did the nickname Nash come from?
That was from Terry McDermott when he became the assistant manager. And we had one of the first games, him and Kevin were in charge. And we're training in our Nash in Geordie dialect means you need to get somewhere quickly. And I said to Terry, I need to Nash home, but I'll be back in time for the coach leaving. And he was basically saying, Nash, what does that mean? And it just stuck ever since. A lot of people think it's from the old, what do you call it? Nash the dog, Nasha the dog.
Nasha, yeah, that's what I thought.
Yeah. But no, that wasn't. I mean, hopefully that's the only nickname I had. I can imagine there was a few more, but we'll keep it at Nash.
Okay, Nash is fine. Nash is good. It feels weird calling you Lee because I've always known you as Clarky, so I'll say Clarky, right? But Clarky, thanks very much, mate. Really appreciate the chat. You tested my resilience having to speak about Newcastle, but I hope you enjoyed it just as much, mate.
Thanks very much. All the best. Stay safe.
All the best, mate. Stay safe, chap. All right.
Bye.
Thanks, mate. Bye-bye.